Hey and welcome, Hammeh here, talking about one-tricking, yes, but from a bit of a different perspective. I've scrapped about 3 different scripts for this video, but a post by community manager Josh Engel attempting to clarify Blizzard's position has, in my opinion, like a lot of the community's arguments on both sides over the last weeks and months, been unable to address certain larger questions as to where all of this focus comes from. Should we focus on specialism or generalism in our Overwatch play? Does Overwatch as a game encourage one above the other? And what should the balance be in competitive when we approach the mode as players? There is no easy answer, but in this video I'd like to break down the post, the challenges I think it actually creates rather than solves, where the problems from this perceived stereotype of one-tricking could really have actually come from, why these have arose, and how we as a community to start with, and perhaps Blizzard can try and do something about it. Timecodes in the description to skip to different parts, and during this video you'll see me playing heroes I consider myself to be good at and worse at in competitive in what some may term optimal and less than optimal situations, so feel free to mock my attempt at attacking Hollywood with Widowmaker. Now my team, after my defensive Torbjorn performance there, were more than happy to let me try it as DPS, a role that I don't think I'm best at. That team consensus and all of our parts in helping towards the right balance between what we want to achieve and what our team wants to achieve, particularly in competitive, is something that will be one of the focus topics of this video. Now before we get stuck into the post, let's quickly have a go at what people perceive the term one trick to mean against the kind of behaviour that's probably most disruptive that is associated with it. I am thinking about people who play one hero into any and all situations because they want to, and that's how they like to play the game, and may, more often than not, decide to above the general consensus or mood of the team in which they are playing on at any particular one time. And I'm talking about mainly in a competitive solo queue or small grouped situation rather than someone doing this as part of a 6-stack in competitive. So it's hard to nail down a true definition of one trick. I think the community very often associates a particular kind of behaviour with people mostly playing one hero, and that gets bundled up into the term one trick. You can mostly play one hero and not show these kinds of behaviour, or indeed you can play every hero to a reasonable degree and still not be a very good teammate. So by no means are these two mutually exclusive, but they're not wrapped up in the same package either. So firstly, the post. Well, the post attempts to set out Blizzard's philosophy about one tricks, and the post says that we believe players can choose to play any available hero during any game at any time, and that their choice of hero alone is not a behaviour that should be penalised by our customer service team under any of the player report categories. Well, that is fair, and Blizzard can't say anything else above that, but I believe that the rest of this post, as well as that, misses an underlying point or doesn't cover some things in here. It goes on to say, we believe players should be evaluated based on their actions with whichever hero they choose. If a player disrupts their team by intentionally feeding with any hero, you should report that player for griefing, and then it gives other examples. So again, so far so good, stating what I feel is probably the obvious so far. If a player communicates in a hateful or harassing manner with any hero, you should report that player for abusive chat, sure, but that's because they're abusively chatting. That's not to do with the hero that they're playing, so it seems like a bit of a moot point to me. Now here's the bit where I feel that confusion is introduced or a point is not addressed, and indeed this happens in so many one trick or playing so much of a hero debates that the community has on both sides of the coin. I'm not saying for the people who are in defense of this behaviour or in support of this behaviour or against it either. If a teammate is actively trying to perform well on their hero and help their team, they should not be reported under any category. Players who inaccurately submit reports and attempt to punish someone's hero choice are considered to be harassing or griefing their fellow player, and that makes it harder for Blizzard CS to do their job. Let me say this to start with, no one should be reporting people for incorrect reasons, but Blizzard leave a big gaping hole in my view with this next piece. Your teammates can respectfully provide their opinion and suggest using a different hero for the gameplay situation that your team is experiencing, but the final decision about which hero you want to play with is yours alone. And the final piece, we built Overwatch around the concept of teamwork. The game is much more fun for everyone in a match where we're picking heroes that contribute to the overall success of the team. We won't be actioning you if you only play your main, but we don't believe this is the ideal way to play Overwatch, especially in competitive settings. So my concern with this, before I go and look at the root cause of all this to start with, is that this is potentially a green pass to enable people who play in a more self-centric way, I'm going to say, and you can argue whether or not that's the right thing to do, we'll discuss that later, to pick a hero that they want to play, regardless of the situation, and say, I'm allowed to because I'm trying my best. It doesn't matter if they're countered, it doesn't matter if they lose, it doesn't matter if the entire team is against that, because if they're trying their best, according to what Blizzard have said here, and they are playing a particular hero, even if they play badly, you can't be reported for playing badly as a hero, you can be reported by trolling as a hero. And that is a grey area that Blizzard have not defined in this post. I'm just slightly concerned that this post is going to give a green light to that behaviour. Feels wrong to me, personally, for the mood of solo queue competitive ladder. Now, what effects will this have? We will only see next season, and it could really go one of two ways. Diamond and above next season, don't forget, performance-based SR is being taken out of your calculation for that. I think perhaps we'll see, depending on how this works, either players who are very focused on playing a particular hero in all situations, whether their team are on board or not. Note, I'm not mentioning a particular hero or a particular situation there. The most stereotypical behaviour that's associated with the term one trick, whether you believe that they're one and the same or not. I think they'll either group up a bunch, and if so, that's actually okay or better than the current situation, teaming up with like-minded people who are totally supportive of their playstyle to play competitive, and competitive is where I'm focusing here. Unless you're teaming up, you still might get grouped with these people, but at least they have people who are working around them, and then that's a luck of the draw. And with many of these things in Overwatch, the ultimate argument is always going to be, well, if you group up with 5 other people, then you don't have to worry about this anymore. The other thing we'll see is that if people play a particular hero come rain or shine in all kinds of situations, whether their team are broadly favourable or supportive or not, and they don't make it work with their team, then we will see them perhaps drop a little bit. So if performance-based SR is such a big factor, as some people have speculated or perhaps seen in the past, in terms of keeping these players come rain or shine in the positions they've been, or even if they've been climbing, then they'll be grouping up more to do this, or they'll just be perhaps losing more games if they're not playing that hero with their team in a way that makes sense. If they're not truly good at that hero and getting their team on board, then we'll see perhaps them drop a bit as well. Now, there will be some frustration around people who play with those players to start with, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. The final thing will be is, will more people be doing this up to Diamond and then changing their playstyle? So will we see more of a collection of people trying to focus on one hero to climb with performance-based SR up until they get into Diamond, and then suddenly changing their play after that? It may make the Platinum Diamond border feel a bit funny, but the only way we're going to find out is in January of 2018 and onwards. So where has this really come from? What is the question that people are kind of ignoring behind this? And then what can we as a community and Blizzard potentially do about this in future? Well, I've had 20-minute videos on this that I haven't made. I've made the audio, so I'm going to try and keep this as succinct as possible. Before we get into the debate, of course you should be able to pick and play what heroes you like, and a lot of heroes can work in situations that people don't give them credit for. Overwatch's meta changes consistently. One hero's favourite today, it could be rubbish tomorrow, depending on what Blizzard do to it, what new heroes do. And new and different team compositions are always fun. You can very easily, however, with that post that Blizzard have made, play in a way that does not tick all of their boxes for being actionable against, and still allow you to put your own wants and needs above that of 5 other team members in a competitive situation, or just troll without being bannable. That's my concern with the post that Blizzard have made. However, really, this is as close as we're going to get on a clarification on punishment in terms of Blizzard and whether one tricks are punishable or not, depending on what you mean by that phrase. Why is this a challenge and where does it come from? Well, ultimately Overwatch is a team game played by individuals on the most part in competitive, with individual desires and their own individual needs. I really enjoy playing Diva. I am maybe a Diamond Diva at best. There's no different to me wanting to play, in my mind, any other hero. I want to play Mercy. I want to play attack on all maps as Torbjorn. I want nothing more than to play Genji or Lucio. Now, I also want to win. Hero swapping mid-game, the draw and fun of the game and one of its unique points makes this harder for people to reconcile. I think Overwatch asks more than other team games of its players in terms of social skills and emotional management. Other games don't have these problems, or have them to less of a degree due to the way in which they work. In a straight MOBA, League of Legends, Dota, Heroes of the Storm, you lock your hero before the game starts, and there is a draft process, a one-by-one pick and ban process, allowing this social contract to be discussed before the game, the team to try and come together and work it out. There will still be arguments, but it's all wrapped up in one way or another before the game starts. Overwatch, you can change mid-game. It's encouraged as part of the back and forth of the game and what makes it unique and fun. Social dynamics, though, can change with that in an instant. Now, in signing up for a particularly competitive match, you're asking 6 people on a team, most of the time strangers, to try and either balance their desires with those of others, or to suppress their individual desires, wants and needs for a greater good, which in theory is that of the team being cohesive and trying to win the match. Now, in theory, everyone coming into a competitive Overwatch game should share those desires. Some people don't want to make that decision at all, and that's where it comes into bad teammates, rather in terms of what hero they're playing, how and in what area. So, as I said at the beginning, a bad teammate is not always someone playing one hero, as the same way that a good teammate is not always someone who is playing multiple different heroes indeed. So herein lies the summary of the thing that I think is mostly ignored in all of this. Why are we even in this situation in a class-based team cooperative shooter that Overwatch is in the first place? Why are people picking and specialising in 1 or 2 heroes, or one role out of the 4 odd on offer? Everyone, I would think, plays Overwatch for fun, relaxation, or some kind of fulfillment, in whichever way they manifest. Some people like to see improvement and feel rewarded by that, and I think personally that Overwatch's game systems, whether it's been fact or just been perceived to be that way, it's historically rewarded specialism. Picking a hero or role and playing it more may initially help you depending on how you view learning. help you up a skill level more quickly, mechanically, for example, in terms of your physical control and specialization and skill with, say, a particular hero. Of course, there are diminishing returns. You cannot just put infinite time into a hero. The more you do so, you're going to need to play or train in the right way or train specific disciplines or skills. I'd go and check out the various coach channels for more on that theory and thought. As an extreme example, depending on your starting skill level or familiarity with shooters as a game type, I'd say that one person from scratch playing all 26 heroes for an hour may not have as much of an individual impact on a competitive game or otherwise as one person who's played 26 hours on one hero. I don't really care for this example whether that's Soldier, Mercy, Symmetra, Genji, Mercy, Torbjorn on whatever map or in any way, just as a very, very general summary, and I know there are flaws in that. Being a generalist doesn't necessarily make you a good teammate or indeed a better player, depending on your definition of that. Specialism has also in the past been associated with one-tricking, these attempts to game the SR system and therefore the climb in SR and that shiny little badge you have on your profile. SR, of course, is the general summary of your skill level, which has issues in and of itself. But it's the best we have right now as a badge for how good, quote-unquote, you are as an Overwatch player. That in turn sometimes creates an almost passive lock-in that people have talked about. If you play a hero or role particularly a lot, there'll be a self-fulfilling loop. People looking at your profile in competitive and asking you to play the hero they feel you are best at in terms of hoping to pull together the most ideal team composition. Now this creates a tough middle ground before we even talk about one-tricking and the behaviour of whoever, whether it's someone in a ladder game or someone that we watch streaming. How flexible should we try and be? Against how specialist should we try and be? Should I try as a new Overwatch player to be the most adaptable multi-role or hero teammate possible to give perhaps me and my solo queue teammates the best chance of winning? Or do I specialise to push myself forward, regardless of 5 other people's wants and needs? If I'm that good at Torbjorn, if I'm that good at Genji, if I'm that good at Mercy, should I make the call for myself and 5 others that the best shot of a competitive match is me playing my best hero? Where's the middle ground in all of this? And there probably isn't a perfect one. This is why and I'm going to put it in quotes again, one-trick problem, or the behaviour that frustrates people, whether that's associated with playing one hero in one situation or all situations or not, is ultimately down to us as players, a community and people. But there are things that I feel that both we and Blizzard can do to frame this and make the environment a little bit better to work and play in. Going back to the blue post, this is why I don't believe it's any kind of solution, if there even is a perfect way of articulating it. Just because we can play one hero in all solutions in competitive and not be banned for it, that doesn't mean that I think personally in an ideal world we should or should encourage it. Blizzard are in a little bit of danger of backing themselves into a corner with this with regards as to how they maintain a positive competitive environment unless there's another system that they can use beyond punishment, the stick. It's Blizzard almost saying, right, you play what you want to play, you sort it out between yourselves, and we'll punish any problems that arise that are against this philosophy. I think that we need a bit more than that. Bad play is not punishable. Rightly so, otherwise I would have been reported for a lot of the gameplay you see in this video. For my Widowmaker play in this video, for example. I'm not a Diamond Widowmaker, I don't think I'm a Platinum Widowmaker, I don't think I'm even a Silver Widowmaker. I don't play her well in this footage, I miss so many shots. But I and my team are having fun in a competitive Diamond match. They trusted me to change here if we struggled, and they didn't mind me giving it a go after my first half performance as Torbjorn on defense. Thus was the social contract between us in this particular game forged. Now, as I've said before with one trick, let's leave that term at the door. We're thinking about a particular kind of behaviour, not a label. People who play one hero into any and all situations because they want to and decide that they want to do that above the general consensus or mood of their team, I think are being enabled by this post. It's almost saying you don't have to worry about team consensus, a thing that I think is kind of important for everyone's enjoyment, although it may not be conducive to everyone's improvement. It's almost saying to people I think they don't have to cooperate. They can point at these rules and say that they can't be punished for what they're doing, but I'm concerned this will make the atmosphere in competitive potentially feel worse unless these players group up with people or Blizzard put another system in place to keep this in check. I fully admit that things can change. I'm not going to say that I have all the right answers. I used to hate playing with Hanzos and Widows. I'll happily say that. Now I don't so much. If they're good, I can see that they're doing a job and it's working. But is it necessarily the best thing for the team? Is it what our team can work with? If it's not, then there needs to be a balance found. This is the social contract I'm talking about. The meta can change, opinions will change, and ditto with the atypical good or bad quote-unquote hero picks. Now, I love playing Symmetra. I've played her on attack sometimes. I play her on attack Hammeh sometimes. I am on the whole the last person to criticize or ask for a Symmetra swap, but if I do, and when I do, it's because I feel that the presence of that hero with the teammates I currently have in a solo queue competitive scenario are more likely to hinder the team mood, and therefore our ability to win based on the team mood than help in terms of that individual player's Symmetra skill. Should I be the person to make that judgment? Maybe not, but everyone in a competitive game will try to make that judgment in some way or another. If a team is positive or accepting about it, I try to reinforce the message of let's go for it, let's change fast if it doesn't work, and let's all get get on board and not blame this person. If we're going to support them to play this hero, we all need to be the solution. It's not Blizzard's job to make us better people, but I think that they can set more of a direction for their vision of how competitive teamwork should work and encourage, and indeed perhaps coerce, where necessary, us to try and follow it. So finally, what can we and what can Blizzard do? You cannot create a queue system or indeed a punishment system that will completely eliminate this behaviour, but what Blizzard could perhaps do is positively reinforce learning multiple roles to a given degree of competency or having some more generalist tendencies above specialisation. But that all depends on what kind of competitive environment we as players and Blizzard want. We can help us as a community by supporting people with single or double hero play histories on one character who want to try another hero in competitive to do that without the fear of censure or punishment or abuse. What Blizzard can do to help is by clarifying what ethos they actually want competitive to be, and this post, in my opinion, although it does part of it, leaves some gaps which doesn't help that in terms of how they want people to come together and play. Blizzard could put in achievements, they could put in sprays on a seasonal basis perhaps, and obviously there needs to be a balance. You don't want people playing heroes just to get a pretty spray and spoiling or making the competitive experience harder because of that. But what if you rewarded people for showing a good degree of competency in perhaps some kind of way on multiple different heroes or multiple different roles every competitive season? How about you give an animated spray of a different kind, not just the ones for competitive hitting the top 500, but also for playing a couple of different roles or a couple of different heroes to a given standard or a given amount of time in competitive in a season. So you've maybe played X amount of tanking, but you've also done Y amount of supporting and still stayed within, I don't know, say Platinum or Diamond. You're rewarding people for broadening their hero pool and showing that in a competitive match. Is there a way that you can do that that doesn't get exploited or doesn't make the experience worse? I know that's tough, but these kind of reward systems would be a good thing to look into so that we're encouraging people to be more flexible and support the team, but without totally sacrificing how they want to play the game. Finding this in-between middle ground, this social contract. How can Blizzard reward and encourage that? Now, as well as incentives, there is a forced element. I mean, MOBAs don't let you enter competitive period until you have an experience level on various heroes, so you have at least some kind of hero pool. Now, that forces you to a degree to at least learn different aspects of the game. Could Overwatch do the same thing? I know other people have mentioned this before. Could, instead of having a level 25 requirement, you have a certain amount of hours in each class as well as having level 25? Who knows? Okay, do you think that I'm coming at this from the wrong way? What do you think about this post? I've linked it in the description below. Do let me know your thoughts. This will be my one and only video on the topic until we see a new system by Blizzard that somehow might affect the edges of this. There's no one system that can solve it, or we see the effect of performance-based SR and whether that changes anything in January 2018 onwards. So don't worry, this is going to be my one shot at this for a while, even though it is a very long video. Cheers for tuning in. Lots more Overwatch lore and other videos coming up in the coming weeks. Do like, subscribe, check out my other playlists, voice lines, interactions, and bits about Overwatch in the playlists below. Cheers for tuning in. I've been Hammeh. Take it easy.